2:39 p.m. Underneath the kitchen. Examine the haze. You can barely see from one side of the room to the other through this thick haze. Luckily, it apparently lacks the corrosive properties of its liquid or gelatinous counterparts. At least, it doesn't seem to be eating away at your corneas. Examine the table. The small laboratory table is covered with beakers and flasks and, of course, the requisite accumulation of green muck. This particular green muck appears to have the consistency of mashed potatoes. Examine the beakers. The only thing missing from Moto's lab apparatus is a device to send an arc of electricity across the room. Or perhaps he has such a device and it's buried under the green muck. Examine the petri dishes. No, it's the same. Examine the skeletons. The skeletons, political prisoners no doubt, rounded up by Moto's secret police, are covered with a thick crust of mint green mineral deposits. Whether they accreted as a result of prolonged exposure to this green haze, or if they were like this long before Moto's final experiment went awry, assuming that is the reasonable reconstruction of what happened here, is anyone's guess. Examine Moto. Moto can barely move, shuffling along on clubbed feet, a tremendous hump on his back, his features twisted into an inhuman mask. But then he's always looked like that. The green pustules and missing eyes are a new twist, though. Go east. You jump out of Moto's way just as he makes his final lunge. His rapidly eroding body scatters into pieces upon impact with the floor. Underneath the northeast tower. The floor here is littered with empty canisters of 9-Scavin-L, an odorless, colorless gas which causes immediate, cataclysmic convulsions and death within anywhere from 5 seconds to half an hour, depending on the concentration. A control panel dominates the far wall. Examine the 9-Scavin-L. 9-Scavin-L is an odorless, colorless gas which causes immediate, cataclysmic convulsions and death within anywhere from 5 seconds to half an hour, depending on the concentration. You assumed Moto went through a lot of it in the course of his work, but you never imagined he used this much. Examine the plastic cap. This is the plastic cap to a canister of 9-Scavin-L, an extremely lethal gas. Examine the control panel. The control panel consists of 2 portions, a large lever and a schematic map of the palace. In each room of the palace, there is a recessed circle exactly the size of a canister of 9-Scavin-L. Good God! This panel must be hooked up to the palace's ventilation system. Moto could have gassed anyone or everyone at any time. Indeed, it seems that this device has not gone unused. Sticking out of the circle in the box representing Miss Sierra's room is a canister of 5-Scavin-L, a non-lethal gas generally used in combat or riot situations to knock large groups of people unconscious. But why would Moto want to anesthetize Miss Sierra? You can't imagine that he would find her exceptionally useful in such a state, unless he simply wanted to... Examine the 5-Scavin-L. 5-Scavin-L is a non-lethal gas generally used in combat or riot situations to knock large groups of people unconscious. This canister is hooked up to the air vent in Miss Sierra's room. Moto no doubt used it to render her incapable of resisting his overtures. Examine the lever. The lever is currently in the up position. Examine the schematic map. The palace map has a recessed circle in every room, the exact size of a gas canister. Go west. Wait, exits. Go west. Underneath the kitchen. Varicella Moto's corpse lies here, shrinking before your very eyes as the green slime devours it. Examine Moto. Moto's corpse is bubbling away before your very eyes. Score. Thus far you have eliminated 4 of your rivals. This gives you the rank of Palace Minister still. Examine the dial against the west wall. The dial is marked with numbers from 2,000 to 25,000. Go west. Underneath the northwest tower. You're standing in a stiflingly hot chamber, up to your calves in ash. The only light source is the faint phosphorescent green glow of the top layer of ash. Apparently Moto tested out his new chemical? Virus? On quite a few prisoners before his fatal accident. Examine the ash. You can barely begin to guess how many people Moto must have thrown in here to produce this much ash. Go east. Underneath the kitchen, Moto's key lies at your feet, where his corpse used to be. Get Moto's key. Taken. Examine Moto's key. Moto's key is not unlike your own, except that where your key features a programmable memory bank and audiovisual recording and playback capabilities, Moto's bears only a single silver button. Examine the silver button. This is a silver button built into Moto's key. Given the late Interior Minister's hobbies, this might not be a button you ought to go pressing just for fun. Go south. Underneath the dining hall. Some of the green haze seems to have followed you into this chamber. Pull the pull cord. There's a flash of blinding white light, so bright that it takes you a moment to recover your sight. When you do, you discover that the green haze is gone. Go south. Underneath the courtyard. It is cold and murky down here in this subterranean chamber. Of course, same description. You can see a bottle of malt liquor here. Go south now. Beneath the grand foyer. You are standing at the north end of a huge underground chamber. A fluorescent tube dangles from the ceiling, dim to the point of uselessness. Luckily, the room is sufficiently well illuminated by the bright digital readout attached to the huge pile of explosives stacked from floor to ceiling on either side of you. The chamber continues onward to the south, and a door lies to the north. Examine the fluorescent tube. We had that description earlier. Examine the explosives. You don't know enough about explosives to know exactly how all the pieces fit together, but you recognize many of the components. Those are clearly bricks of 4-Scavenex plastic explosive in which the glowing green rods are embedded, and the tanks no doubt contain some sort of volatile gas. The large metal plates must be used to channel the force of the blast in a certain direction. Seems to be mostly upward. And the countless circuit boards and tangle of connecting wire can only be part of the control mechanism. A nasty piece of work. Examine the digital readout. The readout says, armed, insert key to disarm. There is a slot beneath the readout, which is presumably where the message suggesting you insert the key. Examine the slot. This is a small slot, about the same size as a cross-section of one of the palace keys. It is nowhere near deep enough to contain an entire key, however. Go south. Beneath the southern gardens. You are standing at the south end of a huge underground chamber. A fluorescent tube dangles from the ceiling, but the primary source of light on this end of the room as well is the bright digital readout attached to yet another pile of explosives. This one also stacked from floor to ceiling. The chamber continues onward to the north. Examine these explosives. The same, and the same digital readout. Presumably the same slot. Return north. Beneath the grand foyer. Return north. Underneath the courtyard. You can see a bottle of malt liquor here. Climb up. Palace courtyard. You hear thunder off in the distance. No, not thunder, more of a commotion of some sort, but very far off, meaning it must be quite a commotion to be audible so far away. Go west. You remove the oxygen mask first, lest anyone you might chance to encounter think you suspicious. Western ballroom. Go south. Southwest Tower antechamber. The southwest tower lies, amazingly, to the southwest, while other exits lead east to the grand foyer and north to the western ballroom. Southwest. Southwest tower, bottom level. You are standing at the base of the massive marble spiral staircase that comprises the southwest tower. The lower level of the palace is accessible to the northwest. Go up. Southwest tower, middle level. Go northeast. Southwest tower antechamber. You hear explosions off in the distance, tank shells, and the scream of jets. Go north. Western hall. A guard stands watch over the entrance to Verikite's quarters, giggling hysterically to himself. Go north. Northwest tower antechamber. Go east. Throne room. A guard stands watch over the entrance to the royal quarters, though he seems more concerned with his nasty-looking head wound than with the queen's safety. Get receiver. No. Change my tone to servile. You adopt a servile posture. Get receiver. Enter access code 1377. Enter destination code 9643. You punch the code for the Palazzo di Venezia and find yourself talking to a Venetian minister. Yes, the minister says. He glances off screen for a moment. Calling from Piedmont? Ha! If you're calling to gloat about the war, it might interest you to know that we have your pitiful forces in full retreat. Your forces are indeed mighty, Your Excellency, you say. Clearly, a backwater state like ours pales before the glory of a magnificent superpower like Venice. And as palace minister of this wretched principality, it would be my honor and privilege to serve you in any way you deem fit. Oh yes, says a Venetian minister. Prove it. Far be it from me to suggest that there might be any gaps in your infinite knowledge and wisdom, you say. But I have chanced upon a small piece of information, should you be so gracious as to accept it. It seems that the dastardly Varicite has raided your very own weapons caches and turned them upon your glorious city, the scoundrel. What? The minister splutters. But how could he? No matter. We have a bit more foresight than you bumpkins. We never cache weapons without fitting them with self-destruct circuitry, lest they fall into the wrong hands. With that, he starts barking orders over his shoulder, switching off the connection with nary a goodbye. You replace the receiver. You hear a tremendous explosion from overhead, followed a moment later by a bone-shattering crash just outside the palace gates. Get to the receiver again. Enter access code 1377. Enter destination code 8998. You punch in the number for Hangzhou and find yourself looking in upon one of the densely packed court offices. A phalanx of clerks stretches off into the distance, with no fewer than 20 visible even on the small screen. One looks up at you. Ah, at last a representative from Piedmont, he says, his voice stentorian to the point that it sounds almost dubbed. We tried to get in touch with you earlier. We regretfully inform you that your ambassador, the Honorable Marco Puliski, was found murdered a short time ago. Rest assured that the Song government shall bring swift and fierce retribution upon the heads of the perpetrators of this vile act that has tainted our fair city. We shall ship the ambassador's remains back to your country, and you may appoint a new one at that date. The clerk gives you a perfunctory nod of respect, and the screen goes black. You replace the receiver. Will kill you, Varicella! Verkite screams through his megaphone. Kill you! There is a squall of feedback and a loud pop as the megaphone goes dead. Get to the receiver one last time. Enter access code 7552. Wrong number, what? Undo that. I typed it in the wrong order. Actually, first score. Thus far, you have eliminated 5 of your rivals. This gives you the rank of Palace Minister still. Get the receiver. Try that again. Access code 1377. Destination code 7552. You punch in the number for Avignon, expecting it to be answered by a church minister. And indeed it is. However, you are not expecting that minister would be Secondo Varicella. Your family followed long-standing tradition where career choice was concerned. You, the oldest son, went into your father's trade and became a courtier. Secondo went into the clergy, and Tertio into the military. Tertio had, if anything, a more successful career than even yours, climbing the chain of command with the greatest of ease and positioning himself to become the war minister. He even married better than the king, for heaven's sake. But Secondo, as you look at the face on the screen, bloated and giggling, a twisted parody of your own, you feel the bile rise into your throat. Yeth, he lisps. Oh, hello, primo. Is this a social call, perchance? Your message from the papal representatives completely forgotten, you hang up in disgust. Go west. Go northwest. Northwest Tower antechamber, Northwest Tower middle level. Go down. Northwest Tower bottom level. You are standing at the base of the massive marble spiral staircase that comprises the Northwest Tower. The lower level of the palace is accessible to the southeast. Go southeast. Northwest Tower antechamber. Slumped against the wall is the war minister, Klaus Verkite. You, he cries, his voice wildly unsteady. Varicella, you did this. No one else could have. Kill you. Drop everything. Verkite leans against the wall. It's the only thing keeping him from collapsing. Open my hair oil. Your hair is already adequately oiled for the day. At several hundred francs per bottle, you can scarcely afford to waste it. Open my hand lotion. You just had a manicure, so you needn't worry about ministering to your hands again for several hours. Play with my dinosaur. Rah! Now the dinosaur eats the war minister. Now it eats the Christ minister. Ha 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 ha! Do it again. Examine, Verkite. It always struck you as odd that Verkite managed to accrue a reputation as some sort of super soldier. You associate that item with some sort of Cro-Magnon and bloody fatigues, which could scarcely be a less accurate description of the war minister. No, Verkite has always struck you as being firmly ensconced on the other end of the spectrum. Face chiseled, but not masculine, the plastic surgeon's attempts to make him look more Aryan succeeding only in making him appear thoroughly inbred. A physique shaped not by the rigors of combat, but by isometric exercise and hypodermic injections, a uniform that looks more like fetish gear than the garb of a true soldier. Now, you are pleased to note, Verkite has finally gotten his uniform dirty. In fact, he's a wreck. His uniform is in tatters, his hair is burnt and his face blackened. He's visibly bleeding from any number of lacerations, and a broken leg trails behind him as he drags himself along the wall. Helicopter crashes take a lot out of a fellow. Play with the tarot cards. You shuffle the deck and flip over the top card. Yeah, death. Do again. You shuffle the deck again and flip over the top card. Death again. Do it again. You thoroughly shuffle the deck and flip over the top card. Death yet again. Pho, you have no use for this sort of superstitious claptrap. Give a tarot card to Varicella. The War Minister doesn't seem interested. What time are we at? 3:20. '21, '22, '23, '24, 3:25. 3:30. 3:35. 3:40. 3:45. 3:50. 3:55. 4 o'clock. 15. 4:20 passed. 4:30 has passed. 4:40 has passed. 4:50 has passed. Our clock is now off. Kiss Varicella. This is Piedmont, not Sicily. Varicella. Wake up. The War Minister has better things to do. Wake. Hey, Tracy, wake up. Happy Fun Room. You blearily rub your eyes to find your roommate Sheila shining her bed's clip-on reading lamp in your face. You know, she says, I find that when I study with my eyes closed, I retain very little of what I read. Yeah, you grumble. You look at your desk clock. 2:33 a.m. Suddenly, your desk clock seems infinitely more intriguing to you than the book before you. You watch the minutes tick by. At 2:36, you make a mental note to get a more interesting clock and look around the room for some sort of distraction. Anything going on in the building across the way? You peek out the window. Nothing. The few rooms with lights on have the curtains drawn. Losers. You stick your head through the beaded curtain in the doorway to see if anything's going on in the hall. Tracy, Sheila says, raising her head from her pillow to peer at you through one opened eye. Come on. If you fail this test, I'm going to be the one who has to hear you complain the rest of the semester. This would not bode well for the Happy Fun Room. With a deep sigh, you return to your desk and find where you were in the chapter before you dozed off. In 806, Charlemagne drew up a plan for how his sons, Louis, Charles, and Pepin, would divide up his empire upon his death. However, both Charles and Pepin died shortly before Charlemagne himself, leaving Louis to succeed to a united throne. But then Louis, in turn, divided up the empire among his 3 sons. This proved to be a critical mistake, for in attempting to include a 4th son by a new wife a few years later, he precipitated years of civil war which led to the irrevocable fragmentation of the unified Europe his father had built. The letters grow steadily blurrier with each paragraph, but you turn the page, then another, and then another, until at long last you see the words you've been waiting for. Chapter 13. The midterm only covers the first 12 chapters. You're done. You have finished studying for your history test. Would you like to restart, restore a saved game, undo your last move, or quit.